which quarterback's going to wake up in this game? And I'm talking Florida and Texas. You have Texas, who is a 6.5-point favorite by the time we're recording this, walking into the Swamp. This is the second game of the Arch Manning era that the national media and attention are really going to be honed in on. We could talk about how, Arch Manning flexed on a Sam Houston State player. That's nothing at the end of the day. We could talk about how they struggled against UTEP. That's something at the end of the day. And what are they going to look like when they played Ohio State in the shoe in Columbus, traveling to Gainesville in the Swamp? Now, both of these programs are coming off of a bye. Both of these programs have varying levels of expectations. One has potentially one foot out the door in terms of the era, the coaching staff that is currently with this team. And then the other one is potentially in a position where they could be 3-2 going into their biggest rivalry spot against Oklahoma, potentially John Mateer coming back, a make or break point in the season that had national title aspirations. We're talking about the preseason number one team in the country ending up going into their biggest spot with 2 losses. We could be in that position. Now, for Arch Manning in this offense, what is honest and fair expectations? Because we've talked ad nauseum about Texas and during their September stretch and how they had the blessing of not only having a bye week, but 3 straight non-competitive games with UTEP, and then you have Sam Houston State, who hasn't won a football game. Potentially tonight they will. Then you also have UTSA. So you have all these get-right spots between non-Power 4 programs. They're one of 2 top 10 teams, Penn State included, that does not have a Power 4 win at this point. To be fair, they've only played one Power 4 team, that being the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. But we don't really know what we have with Texas. We know we have a good defense, but that's more based on the merit of them beating on bad opponents. And then we think they have a good defense based on how they played against Ohio State, but Ohio State's offense has also kind of looked a little shaky. So what do we really know at this point? Well, I think I have a good defense with Texas. I think I have the better play caller with Texas. I think I have the better rushing attack with Texas. But then we talk about Florida. And if this was in Austin, we could be talking about a game that would be more than likely a blowout. Texas is probably a 9.5-point favorite, probably bumps up to 10. I think this is a great spot for Florida to punch up a little bit, because at the end of the day, even though they're 1-3, and I think, either Bussin' with the boys or Josh Pate made a fair assessment when they said if these 2 teams were to swap their schedules, what would Florida look like right now? They probably would be 3-1. Probably wouldn't be as close with Ohio State, but they would be 3-1. And Texas probably loses potentially to Miami. I think that's a fair assessment. They probably don't lose to USF. But both of these teams, I think, are relatively close in terms of talent. But the little differences is potentially what you trust. I don't think there's any kind of trust that people have with Florida right now, and rightfully so. What have they earned at this point to get this blind trust as a 1-3 program that could be potentially looking at a completely new regime by the end of this season? Even maybe after this game, if it's a blowout, Texas walks into your stadium, kind of like what we saw with Miami last year, what we saw with Texas A&M. The Swamp, as scary as it's presented, may not be the reality. Now, I think there's a couple things to note here. When we're talking about these 2 programs, outside of the fact that they're a bye, the different expectations, they're both terrible on third down. If we want to get granular on terms of what the offense is, it's not just that they're struggling to create explosives. It's not just they're not the most, prolific offenses in terms of points. It's a third down issue. When you get these teams into 3rd and longs, especially Florida, it's not pretty. They cannot continue drives and create quality on a consistent basis. Now, luckily for Florida, they're at home. On the contrary, they do not commit to the run. Now, one thing to point out is both teams, or at least Florida, is like in the hundreds in terms of a lot of rushing statistics. They don't really commit to it. They put a lot of weight onto DJ Lagway, which you get the result of what we saw against LSU. Jaden Baugh has had good moments. If you put up the tape, the guy is efficient. I think he's averaging 6 yards per carry damn near. It's not like he's putting up 2.7 like LSU did against Ole Miss. They are good at what they do, but the problem and what truly becomes the issue is the lack of commitment to the identity that Florida could be a ground and pound team. And it takes less weight on a DJ Lagway. It potentially makes looks a little bit easier. I think anything to take that type of responsibility off of a young quarterback like Lagway, that you could see the pressure starting to get to him. And also reportedly, it sounds like over the bye week, maybe an injury gets a little bit more healed. I do think this game could be very close, because on the opposite side with Arch Manning, I watched a film study from the Film Guide Network. They do fantastic work over there around the Sam Houston State game for Arch Manning. And there was a moment that it kind of clicked when he got popped on, I believe it was a quarterback counter, go follow your tight end. He got popped a little bit. And it may have been the play that the Sam Houston State player taunts a little bit. And then obviously we saw what happened where Arch goes, scores a touchdown, stands over the guy. It became a whole thing on Twitter, which it was a nothing burger in my opinion. If you've never played the sport of football, then I don't know what to tell you. That's just emotion. I don't want my quarterback to be a complete robot, be invested into the game, but that's not the point. I think they found something around Arch that when he's in a clean pocket, he's not really trusting what he's seeing, which is a red flag in year 3, but he hasn't played a ton of live football for the Texas Longhorns at this point. When they get him on the move, changing the spots, get him in the running game, he looks a lot better because he's not having to think as much. He's making a quick read, get the ball out, and he's not trying to rip it as hard. They were talking about how he's trying to put everything, every ounce of mustard into every single throw. And what happens is because you're throwing as hard as you can, the ball hits the dirt a lot more. And it happened a lot in Ohio State. It happened a lot over the month of September, and it happened in the same Houston State game. But it didn't happen when he was having to not really think as much and not try to rip it as much as possible. And so I think when we're looking between these two programs and the quarterbacks and trying to get right, because that's the theme. What can we do to get right? How can I trust the play calling from Billy Napier to get Lagway right? Outside of the idea that they're at home, they're coming off of a bye, they have all this time to prepare. They haven't earned that trust. I know I'm focusing a lot on the offenses, but it's truly from the fact that both of these defenses are going to be good. The total's at 42, I think when I just checked, it was going down. They think it's going to be an ugly game. And so when each drive, both of these teams are going to stall out. They're going to struggle at points. And I think it's also a complete fair assessment to say when these two teams faced last year, there was no Lagway. And I believe every single touchdown scorer except for Wisner is not with the Texas program. You can make a fair assessment and say that the Texas interior defensive line has not really been tested in a run game. But to be fair, Florida hasn't been one to rely on that aspect. And neither of these offenses have a true identity right now. But based on, I guess, if I was to look at a resume, I guess I have to trust Sark in this situation to get Arch comfortable. Maybe they found something. We're talking about trying to start a fire here, and it's just spark after spark after spark. And maybe I saw a little bit more to trust with Texas. Obviously, they probably have the talent edge. They have more of a pedigree, but they also have the more pressurized system here. Where Florida, it's kind of you could throw the kitchen sink, pull out the fake punt, pull out the flea flicker at this point. Because what do you have to lose? If Billy Napier gets fired, DJ Lagway more than likely leaves that building. Jaden Ball, plenty of talented players leave that building. It's all over from that point. And if you were to go beat Texas, and you're this Florida program that was basically writing off Billy Napier, just waiting to see, do we want to make this decision now? Do we want to do it in the middle of the season? You look around to your left and your right, and you're saying, well, he's able to go beat Texas. Maybe we wait this out because our past year and a half has been the most brutal schedule you can ever find. And sure, it doesn't get immensely easier, but anything is better than what we've just been dealing with. Maybe it builds a little bit of momentum. Now it's time for a prediction, because we've talked about all the ingredients here, and I think there's a reason, and I think all the things I've noted is the reason why it's only a 6.5 point favorite. Now, to be fair, on the road, add a couple points, they see a 9 point gap. I don't see that. I'm going to pick Texas because of a couple of reasons. A, that trust factor with Sark. Do I have a blind trust fall? No, I'm probably looking behind me. But Billy Napier, I have no faith that he would catch me. I at least have 30%, 45% maybe with Sark that he's going to catch me on a trust fall. Then paired with the fact that I think that when we're talking about Texas, they have enough ingredients to get right, because I know for a fact that they have the running backs that they could lean into the run. I don't know what I'm getting with Florida. And honestly, with how this season has gone, and I said it on my TikTok at Tegan Randolph, shameless plug, I hate to say it, but I made a bet with myself. I said, I will put on a clown nose if Florida wins, because I got burned and burned again and burned some more by this Florida program and Billy Napier and DJ Lagway. I had so much faith in this team. I'm not going to fall for the bait. I'm not going to see the cheese and see the death trap and go for it. I'm just not going to do it. And so I think it's going to be an ugly game. If you are a bettor, I would take the points of Florida. I wouldn't touch a money line. I wouldn't blame you, but I'm just not going to fall for it at this point. I think these teams talent-wise are close. I think they're eerily similar in play style. You get the home field advantage, but I think Texas's defense is just going to make one more play, one more just game-wrecking play that could potentially put them in a position to do a classic Texas Sarkisian win, which is maybe they get like a 6, 7, 8-point lead. It feels like it's a lot more, but it's truly like one possession on the teetering of two. And they kind of, boa constrictor style type of win. And I think Texas has the ability to do that. If you have any faith on an upset, just take the points. Don't risk yourself with a money line, because Florida will find ways to lose. And I think Texas is more than likely to find a way to win.